All right, and we are back. Welcome into another episode of Keeping Up with the New York Jets. Today is Thursday, June 27th, and the boys are back in town. Took a little break off after the NFL offseason really closed up, and I think we should be here through training camp, through preseason, and into a very pivotal 2024 season for the New York Jets. Alongside Theodore Pristash, I am Blake Pace. Thank you so much for joining us. Theodore, how have you been? It's been a minute since we've been doing this.
You know, I'm good. Life's been good, just living. I'm happy to be back. I will say, I knew that you were going to ask me how I've been, and we've been gone for a while. And I really just wanted to start and just double down on kind of what I was saying in our last pods, just about how tough of an off season this has been, in my opinion.
Oh, dude.
Just because, again, we're sitting here and it's like, all I want to do is be excited for the team, think that the team's going to be good, be excited for Aaron Rodgers to be my quarterback, all this stuff. And I just it feels like I am holding a breath in, and I'm not going to be able to breathe it out until, that Monday Night Football to start the season, when the clock hits 0 and the game's over, and we have a quarterback still on our team. And
yeah,
I keep seeing the Jets are the 4th best roster in the league and blah, blah, blah. And
right.
It's been a tough offseason for me, I will say, from that regard of just being excited, feeling confident about the Jets. So while I was sad to be gone, it was kind of nice to just kind of be take a step back from all that. But yeah, I mean, I'm amped for the season and I'm ready to go, and I'm very happy to be back.
Yeah, and don't worry, we're going to hop right back into things that should make us a little bit worried. At least one of the three things today. I wanted to nickname this show the Missing Peoples podcast. Just we're going to dive into 3 disappearances in the Jets world over the last couple of months, and 2 not so serious, 1 maybe potentially serious. But other than that, we're going to do those 3 things today, and then we're also going to do the trendy, everybody's doing it on their podcast or Instagram reels, blind rankings, where I'm going to go with Teddy. I've got 6 quarterbacks, minimum 5 starts. I wasn't going to pull any random bench guys that maybe made an appearance. I'm going minimum 5 starts as a Jets quarterback, and I'm going to have Teddy blind rank them 1 through 6. It mostly is our era as well, too. So it'll go probably from, go ahead.
So is blind ranking, I have to decide where they rank before I see the other 5? Okay,
yeah.
That's very fun.
Before you know them, you're gonna have to. I think we might just finish off.
Yeah,
we might just finish every episode with a position group and just see how you do with them. But yeah, it's gonna be 6 quarterbacks of the. What I want to say our era for Jets football is Cortland training camp on.
Sure.
I think that's where it kind of finishes up. So 2009, biking over to 2-a-days.
Yeah, I feel like I can think about who the quarterbacks will be almost, but
yeah, there's one that I snuck in because he barely got to 5, but the other ones you'll know the list pretty well. But before we get to the fun part, let's talk about the annoying stuff. Haason Reddick has gone missing.
I am happy that we're starting with the one real true off-season story that there is. This is something that actually matters. So
this matters a decent amount. Yeah. So Haason Reddick, the big trade acquisition this offseason for the Jets. When they had made the deal, I was under the assumption that they knew what contract extension was coming for him already. I'm laughing as I watch Teddy with his cute Stanley drink taking a sip of water while I'm talking.
All of a sudden, it's changed my life. I've drank. I'm staying hydrated like crazy, and I don't have to get 1,000 waters a day.
That was a new development. That was pretty huge. I'm going to give a free ad to the Spice and Tea Exchange of Nashville because they gave me a big 32-ounce one that I'm drinking now too. So shout out water.
That's
back to Haason Reddick. He was the Bryce Huff replacement, the Will McDonald insurance, the starting edge that was going to complement Jermaine Johnson. And usually when trades are made with players that are leaving their current team due to contract reasons, usually the team that is acquiring said player hashes out what a contract would look like beforehand. Now, the tweet that encapsulates everything the most to me, because everybody knows the story if you're listening to this. Haason Reddick is in Japan right now, wearing a kimono, doing his whole whatever he's doing.
Yeah, it didn't report to anything. Didn't report.
Yes.
Like, the Japan stuff's like this week, but as of, all the involuntary
Minicamp,
stuff, the couple voluntary
OTAs
days wasn't there at all. And the way Salah said it was like, I haven't talked to him, and
Yeah.
since then has said a little, but really we don't know much.
The Connor Hughes tweet on June 11th, this is a couple weeks ago now, is what kind of paints it most clear to me. Quote, the Jets and Haason Reddick were believed to be on the same page. It was understood there would be no contract extension before the season. The plan, play it out, play well, then get the deal you desire, ideally with the Jets after the year. Reddick was on board. He told members of the organization that he'd be in attendance for the offseason program and minicamp. Then something changed. It's unclear when Reddick, officially a minicamp holdout, plans on showing up. That's crazy.
Yeah, not ideal.
What are your thoughts? Because to me, I am very pro player. I want players to get their money. But there's also something to be said about a player and his agent going and talking with an organization and saying, yes, we understand. We're on the same page. And then as soon as the transaction is done, plans changed.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's a confusing scenario for sure. Because like before he was dealt and as he was dealt, you kind of understood the story, right? Like you understood that he wanted to get a long-term deal done. The Eagles weren't going to be willing to pay him, for 3 more years, whatever. So it became this, all right, let's trade him. And then when he goes to the Jets and doesn't sign a new deal immediately, the instant thought was, oh, he's okay, going to the Jets, trying to win a Super Bowl, whatever. And that was just kind of it, which at the time was a little odd, because it's a little like, okay, well, he was trying to get an extension with the Eagles. Now he's going to go to the Jets. But that change of scenery at least made some sense of like, hey, I'm just going to go somewhere else. And from a Jets perspective, it's like this perfect situation because the Jets didn't want to pony up for a guy like Bryce Huff, or at least Bryce Huff didn't want to stick around and get the playing time that he would have gotten. So they let him walk. The Eagles go and sign him to whatever deal that was. And then we get an older, more established Pro Bowl level player for a year. And it kind of feels like, in the tweet it says, play it out, play well, then get the deal you desire, ideally with the Jets. You want my opinion? There was the odds he would actually re-sign with the Jets were slim. Like the Jets, because why wouldn't you just pay Bryce Huff? It's a 1-year rental to try to go to the Super Bowl with this guy who's a great player. And it's really easy to be like, wow, the Jets are so stupid. Like, how do you trade for this guy, not give him a deal, and now he's just going to be holding out? But you look at the way things go, you would expect them to have come to that agreement beforehand. So to me, this, at least on the surface, seems like it's Haason Reddick just changed his mind and now is causing a stink. And I don't know, Joe Douglas is one who's going to be given contract extensions he doesn't want to give. So to me, this is Haason Reddick's going to have to just decide, hey, I'm going to come play. Or I don't know what's going to happen because I don't know. It's very stressful because he's a huge piece to this defense, replacing a guy like Bryce Huff, improving our edge room even more, taking the pressure off Will McDonald. Like that plays in so much to, how well you feel about our edges, and it's a problem.
Very big problem. It creates a very big stink that is not the way you would want to have your first interaction be with a new fan base.
Yeah.
Like I said, this isn't like he's going to
Especially
Carolina where he's going to, get his 12 sacks and it's not going to contribute to a win. He is going to a place that is, we need you. We need you because we are playoff or bust. And he's like, nah, that doesn't really matter that much to me. And like I said, I get the player wanting his money, but it seems like he knew, it almost feels like he knew all along that he was going to do this, because now he puts the Jets in a position where, like, will Joe Douglas bend the knee and give him an extension? I keep seeing the reports from Connor Hughes and all the Zach, was it Rosenblatt? Is that his last name? That there's a 2-year deal that makes sense for both sides. And if that's the case, cool, if they can get it done. But it's a bad look. It is, for a player to behave in that manner. And, you can say, well, there's probably two sides to every story. And I'm sure when the time comes and he shows up to one Jets drive, he's going to have his side of the story. But my issue is that the only thing we are hearing right now is the Jets side of the story. He has no story. He has one Instagram story in Japan, and that is all we have seen or heard from him throughout this entire instance. His agent hasn't come out and said anything. It's been silent. So to me, if you had a valid reason, you'd have your story out there. And I don't think it's a bad look, and the fan base isn't going to embrace you by the way you're handling this situation.
Yeah, for sure. And, I do get it to some extent, right? Like, this is a guy who wanted to get paid and then gets traded.
It's his last big contract.
And
it's his last big contract.
Sure. And so you're thinking, like, okay, well, I need to, dig my feet in and kind of make this happen now. It's odd that you came to the agreement that you did with the Jets beforehand. But then also, like, we know, and I don't know all the rules specifically or the fines, but we know that the fines for missing training camp days have increased exponentially, over the past 10 years. Like, Darrelle Revis holding out for 4 weeks of training camp, those days are gone. When you see holdouts today, there are hold-ins. The player shows up, says that they're just not going to participate, whether they point to an injury or not, they can be pretty honest about it. But this is a weird situation where even, like, how comfortable would that situation be when the talk that's coming out of, Robert Saleh and the Jets is like, yeah, we've talked once or twice, but I don't really know why we're not, coming to an agreement here, or what the material change was. So it's just, I don't, it's like, do you wait it out and then just hope he decides, or do you just pony up and give him the contract? And this is what I want to talk about, because I'm a Jets fan. I watched Bryce Huff play his first 4 years, and it was very easy for me to say, like, this is a guy who is very underrated, isn't getting a ton of playing time, but is so productive every time he touches the field. And last year and even the year before, started to get more playing time. Really, you see him affecting the game. Bryce Huff is this, like, great player, in my opinion. And the Eagles signed him to a $51 million deal. I think it's $17 million guaranteed a year, and then could be up to like $20 million a year. So if the Jets didn't want to pay that, and again, they kind of did want to pay that, but Bryce Huff wanted more playing time. But it's like, so are we now going to turn around and pay Haason Reddick, who's an older player, more than that? Like, is that what's going to happen? And my other question for you, like, if I wasn't a Jets fan, but I knew ball, let's say I know ball, which I do.
You do.
Bryce Huff versus Haason Reddick. Like, is Haason Reddick, like, the clear cut, like, I'd rather have this guy on my team? Or does the age and, Bryce Huff only playing like 47% of snaps, like, does that put him over? Because that's where I get confused, right? If it's like, all right, if we're going to have to pony up a $24 million deal or $22 million deal to Reddick, it's like, I wish we would have just tried to pay a little bit more for Bryce Huff. But is that even right? Like, should I want Haason Reddick opposed to that?
I guess it depends on how you're going to use your edge rushers. I'm fascinated to see how Bryce Huff does next year. With a full workload, I will be very interested. He is a smaller edge, and being out there for a higher percentage of snaps, I wonder if he'll be as successful. And I think you will be able to pick apart some of his, deficiencies in the run game, etc. Whereas with Reddick, I've seen him out there as a 3-down guy. He definitely did change his tone a little bit recently and started to be I'm going to try and get sacks guy last season. And the Eagles put out quotes after he was traded as well, too, that he was like chasing sacks basically, and not
But
really.
what does that
he
mean?
was focused on the money.
When else?
It means he's always playing for the quarterback. His eyes are solely on the quarterback for passing plays. So on like run plays or anything, he's
okay.
Yeah, he's just looking for the quarterback. So I think Haason Reddick is probably a more reliable 3-down player, but at the same time, you have more questions with how Huff projects as a 3-down player. And I think what happened is once they knew Huff wasn't going to be around, and whether it was pay or roll, whatever, once they knew he wasn't going to be around, they're like, okay, well, what's the best value on the market? And if you thought about edge guys available in free agency or trade for the Jets to be in a position, they wanted a guy on a rental. They didn't want to pay a guy 5 years, because then why did you spend a first-round pick on Will McDonald? You're going to have to maybe extend Jermaine Johnson at some point. Like, the whole point in getting Haason was that it was like 1 year, maybe a second, but it was like, because if you traded for Brian Burns in Carolina like the Giants did, you had to give him a 5-year extension, and that just wasn't going to happen. So they got fucked. The Jets really did in this situation, because, if it can land on a 2-year deal, it's not that bad, but the Jets wanted this to be a 1-year rental, and they might not get that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, like, if we sign him, like, if we get a deal done, I'm not going to be sitting here complaining about, like, oh, we overpaid this guy, because we're at this point where it's like, we just need players on the field in 2024, and that's what we need, right? So it's like, do whatever you got to do to the books to make that happen. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, Reddick signing his next multi-year deal with the Jets in 2025 after this trade was done wasn't something I was like, oh yeah, that'll probably happen. I'd probably put it at like 30%, because that's just how Joe Douglas rolls. Like he is, I'm not thinking of the word, but he's particular about, the extensions that he gives, and he doesn't want to pay like an old player to be out of their prime. So it'll be interesting to see it play out for sure. I guess, I mean, if we just have to say what we think is going to happen, I would assume that the Jets are just going to have to say, all right, fuck it, here's a 2-year deal. But where do you think that money lands? Like, is it in the 20 million plus range?
What's his current salary at?
I think it's like 13.
I'm going to pull it up right now.
Or 12.
The thing is, if you can pull that up while I kind of answer your question, I think what will happen, I think the biggest thing will be in the extension. There will be a 2-year, but what I think it will do is the biggest thing to come out of it will be that his 2024 salary is bumped up. I think that's where you can kind of meet in the middle, where you can say, okay, we'll give you the 2024 salary and a 2025.
He's due to make 14.
The 2024
and a quarter.
I mean, and how much can you really even bump him up at that point? If you get him to 20 for this year, and God, my thing is, I hate the idea of
it's like, are we going to give this guy $40 million
attaching anything to 2025? Because we're gonna have a conversation this offseason. It's one of the things that I want to talk and pick your brain on the most. Is like, we don't need to look at it now because it's 2024, but next offseason there are some tough decisions to make. DJ Reed, Jermaine Johnson, like, there are some guys that you're going to have to look at extension wise or letting go in free agency where you're like, fuck. And the problem becomes those decisions get equally or infinitely harder when you have Haason Reddick on the books for $22 million or $23 million. So,
and for what it's worth, I mean, we're in this stage with, like, now we're like, oh, Aaron Rodgers hopefully plays the next 2 years. If he didn't get hurt last year, this maybe would have been his last year. You lose some of that money. Like, so it's like all these things are going to pile up on us when you have a draft class the way we did. I don't know. We shall see.
The only thing that would be so interesting to me, because I think we've only seen it once before, and it was a former Jet. It wasn't while he was with the Jets, but when Le'Veon Bell just sat out that entire season, like, if Joe Douglas is hell bent and is just like, I can't give you money for 2025, will.
But that's what I'm saying is like Haason Reddick sitting out the entire season is so financially detrimental
Crazy.
to him. Like he would lose
Yes.
basically his whole contract. So it becomes this like he's going to play, I believe, but it's this weird like like what if he's like a cut candidate all of a sudden? Or so who knows what's going to happen? But they have to come to some type of agreement. But it also feels like both sides have a lot of leverage almost. So it's just odd.
I brought this up to you when it first came out, and I don't know why they went away with it in the NBA specifically, but like, what happened to mutual options?
Yeah, you did bring this up.
They've never been a thing of
Blake
the NFL.
Brought up the idea of a player and team option. Is that a thing in the NBA where they can just both be like, yeah, let's run it back?
It was either NBA or MLB, and the only reason I know it is because of playing like GM mode in video games. There was a mutual team player option thing. I think it was basketball. But like, why can't Joe Douglas and Jermaine Johnson sit down and say like, here's the number for 2025. We both have the right to say yes to it, but if one of us says no to it, it's off the table. So that way, say that it's set at a number that they want. Haason can play his way into that number and be like, wait, I balled out. I'm worth more than that. And then he can go test free agency. But likewise, the Jets could also say, hey, it just isn't working out. We can go. Now, after talking this through with you, I'm realizing the problem would be they could set any number, and I don't think the Jets would agree to it.
Yeah, to me, it sounds good in principle.
That's the problem.
And there certainly would be situations where the team would say, yeah, we'll take you, and the player would say no. But I think 9 times out of 10 in that situation, it just goes back to the team having leverage and being like, well, we don't want to pay you that much.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right. If Haason is not going to agree to some fake number that the Jets set when the Jets know that they can just like say no to whatever number they want.
We'll give you
because they have that control.
Nah,
yeah, sure. And then it's like, oh wait, we actually have to extend everybody else. Yeah, you're right. That doesn't work. Fuck. I thought I had something figured out. I don't know where it lands.
I know. I mean, this is a story. There's just not a lot of information coming out about it, and we are in that kind of time.
Right.
Like once training camp gets rolling and we're a little close, like I'm sure they'll just be forced to get some details dug up about this. But as of right now, all we know is that Haason Reddick didn't show up to anything and wants a new contract, right? And the Jets are hesitant to do that. We shall see.
One last thing on it. Do you blame the Jets at all for thinking that the guy that didn't want to play out his contract on the Eagles was then going to want to play out his contract on the Jets, and they had a mutual understanding without putting anything to like paper?
Like when you say it like that, and when you have the the
sounds
hindsight,
bad, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
but it's one of those things where it's like if they obviously talked before the deal was done, and they obviously came to an agreement. So it's like it's like this weird. It's like, yeah, maybe you're dumb, but also that guy could have just not done that and been honest with what he said. But it's also like if you put yourself in that position to get screwed, maybe you will. But I don't know. What did we trade for him? Like a 5th?
I thought it was some mid-round pick. Was it 3rd? Let me pull it up real quick. My whole system is thrown off here. As you can see from our backgrounds, we're using something a little different, and I'm recording from the back of the Spice and Tea Exchange in Nashville.
Check out the YouTube for any of you freaks out there.
Haason Reddick trade. It was in exchange for a 2026, no cookies, 2026 3rd-round pick that can become a second.
Oh, decent. So, I mean, it's down the line.
Decent return if you get.
We need this guy to play for us for sure.
I'm pretty sure the condition was percentage of snaps played, which he will never hit under a Robert Saleh-led defense.
Sure,
so
that's good.
Probably something like that.
The point being, like, you can say, the Jets are just getting screwed here, like, and it's not really their fault, which is fine. But at the end of the day, like, they are the ones who need to resolve it, almost, and it's like,
Yeah.
At some point, like at the end of the day, him playing this year is going to be better for us than him not playing, right? So it's like not
Right.
paying him just to prove a point and to hold your ground and then letting that affect your 2024 team does not seem like that doesn't seem to be the way to win, especially when you're all coaching for your jobs this season. So to me, it feels like you got to get it done. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's tons of cap hurdles and we
Right.
don't have a ton of cap room and all this stuff,
Oh, dude.
but it just feels like one of those things you got to get done because regardless of what the lead up or reasoning why, it's like if you have this guy sit out and doesn't play for you, that hurts you.
Well, and say that they put a number on to 2025. The Jets have a good season. They make the divisional round, AFC title game, whatever it is. And then they try trading him in the offseason. Hey, who wants to
Sure.
take him? And it's like, no, we all know that you want to get off his money. We'll let you let DJ Reed and Jermaine Johnson, not get, extensions or, whatever the fallout is. Like they know that everyone will know now because of this that the Jets are kind of
Yeah.
hamstrung to this.
Yeah.
So very interesting. And we won't have answers for a bit, but definitely the biggest thing since we've stopped recording, since we've stopped putting out episodes that we needed to discuss. And the one that actually, the only thing that carries actual weight and value as we head into the 2024 season. So to move to something completely unrelated that has nothing to do with the impact on the 2024 season. The second missing person, Aaron Rodgers.
I don't know
what I love is
what
that
your perspective on this is going to be or how you're going to, intro this. But to me, I was so annoyed with how much this was talked about, a few weeks ago, and we weren't recording podcasts. And now that I'm sitting here on a podcast on June 26th, 2 weeks later, and now I'm going to talk about it, really grinds my gears. But it is good to do, obviously.
If you look in the show notes, I specifically said, I'm tired of people using Aaron Rodgers clickbait stuff so they have shit to talk about in June. And then in parentheses, I put, and here we are using their reaction to have shit to talk about in June. That's my thoughts exactly.
Quick overview, not that anyone doesn't know, but
yes. Aaron Rodgers communicated to the Jets coaching staff and management that there was a week stint or however long stint that he was not going to be around. He is somewhere else in the world. No one else knows except for him and probably the people that he communicated it to. So everything's fine, but it does line up when the schedule comes out with mandatory minicamp. And because they had already talked about and discussed it, nothing was put out afterwards. And then all of a sudden, minicamp shows up and Aaron Rodgers isn't there. And Robert Saleh kind of just sits there and is, oh, yep, unexcused absence, subject to fine, yada, yada, yada. The next day, no, I haven't talked to Aaron in this time. And anybody that needed something to talk about in the slowest part of the NFL offseason took this for days.
Literal days.
And it is the biggest nothing burger of all time. We always see eye to eye on stupid shit like this, so I knew that we were going to both just kind of vent about media outlets and the people that would text us, but I legitimately had I had a Jets friend be like, can't believe Aaron skipped out. And I'm like, what the fuck are we doing right now? It's such a nothing burger. This is,
if you're not locked in to the NFL, and you're just a normal fan, which I would say 90% of people are, and most people aren't oh, the Jets off season schedule came out. Let me really digest this and understand the dates, right? And you're just relying on the big media and all this stuff, and they eat it up because Aaron Rodgers skipping mandatory minicamp is quite a headline. If you're not really sure of the context, let me read you some dates. All right? Ready for this, Blake? Here's the list of involuntary workouts, okay, on the Jets offseason. Involuntary. You don't have to show up if you don't want to. All right? May 20th, May 21st, May 23rd, May 28th, May 29th, May 31st, June 3rd, June 4th, June 6th, June 7th. Okay, that's 10 practices. That's 10 days. Let me read you the list of mandatory minicamp. Ready? June 11th, June 12th, June 13th. I believe they only practiced 2 of those 3 days. So Aaron Rodgers went to 10 involuntary practices, then didn't go to 2 voluntary, which supposedly had been pre-communicated. And it's one of these things where, exactly what you said, it's the biggest nothing burger. Like, Tom Brady missed 11 days of training camp a few years ago, and people, like, cared, but also everyone was just kind of like, well, you know. And Aaron Rodgers is one of those guys, whatever you think of. Like, if Aaron Rodgers wants to skip the entire offseason program, I don't care. You're Aaron Rodgers. You, like, obviously I'd love for you to be there. You're on a new team. You haven't played a season with, all this stuff. You're Aaron Rodgers. You can do whatever you want. So I don't care. And now where I think this story got immensely frustrating is, I think when this initially happened, right, Robert Saleh said he wasn't there. Everyone started freaking out. And that was the story, right, was Aaron Rodgers not at minicamp. And I think that a very strong, maybe not majority, but a very strong amount of people quickly recognized that and were like, that's kind of bullshit. Like, it doesn't really matter. It's just minicamp. He was there for, you know, whatever. And so then the story very quickly flipped. So you had like 2 days of Rodgers coverage. Then you had like a week of, man, Robert Saleh really botched this. What an idiot. Like, why do you have to say it like that? He doesn't have to say it's an inexcused absence. He doesn't have to say he didn't talk to him. Why didn't he do a better job? And that is just so unbelievably ridiculous to me. And what I think it is it was like the media wanted a story. They got it. Then started getting a little bit pushback, and they're like, okay, but how can we spin this so that it's still kind of a story?
To keep
and
talking
it's like, let's talk
it.
about how the coach of the Jets is incompetent and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, that just frustrated the hell out of me. And like, I said this to my brother because my brother, like, loved to be like, yeah, it doesn't matter, but then act like it mattered for like a week. But it's one of these things where it's like,
we gotta have Brian on the pod,
no, never.
By the way.
That's not
we gotta have him on at some point.
I'm perfectly fine shitting on Robert Saleh if you want to. Like, I think he's a good coach. I think he's been dealt a shitty hand. But if you want to look at, you know, the past couple years and how the offense is played and how the quarterback, and you want to put a lot of that on Robert Saleh, like, go for it. Like, results matter. It does. And if you want to shit on Robert Saleh for things that matter, like, I'm not going to sit here and stop you. But when you're just going out of your way to make stories and make it seem like he's incompetent for something that, like, how can him explaining a non-story be a story? You know what I mean? Like, it frustrates me so much. So yeah, that's where I stand on it all.
The only thing that I disagree with is on the second day when they asked him have you talked to Aaron, you know, since you last met with us in the last 24 hours? He was just like, no. And I was like, you could say, I would have wanted him to, like, make a statement of how not a story it was and be like, this is ridiculous. He told me he was going to be away. I'm not talking to him while he's away. We communicated this 3 months ago. What the fuck aren't you listening to? That's what made me mad, because then he was just like, he just answered with he does like the Bill Belichick, like, no.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you can just tell these people to shut the fuck up. Put them in their place. I would be so infuriated being the head coach of the New York Jets and having to listen to these dumbass questions every day.
Well, and
oh
I
my
think
God, it would drive me nuts.
It's like a hard thing to balance, and we talk about it all the time, but it's like, when you're not winning, it's easy to look like a clown show. And when you're winning, really nothing else really matters.
Yeah.
And so, like,
right.
In my opinion, obviously I'm not there in the building, but in my opinion, and from the quotes that you got from players and stuff like that, like, in the building, I'm sure it was barely a thought, right? Like, I'm sure that they all recognize Aaron Rodgers isn't here for 2 days, was there for 10.
Sauce came out and talked about it.
Yeah, and a few other guys did too. But yeah, so it's like, that seems like a non-issue, and you're just there, you're practicing, your coach is coaching, you know, like that probably was not a thing that they were all thinking of for those 3 days. And so then it becomes like this game of, like, should the coach of the New York Jets have more savvy and like anticipate kind of the media reactions, right? And it's hard because the New York media is so crazy, right? Like this happens and it's the back page of the New York Post or whatever, and it's like this big story all over the place. And that's kind of how New York works. Like they're always going to make these things, these big deals, especially with the Jets, especially when we haven't won in 13 years. Like all this stuff piles up. But to me, this is just a huge, like, who gives a fuck that just spun out of control. And then, here we are 2 weeks later complaining about how it's stupid.
It's stupid. Yeah, exactly.
No,
we had to talk about it. Were you like surprised at all that it wasn't communicated to the rest of the roster, or is that another? I don't understand what those programs are like. Like
I wish I knew more.
Tyrod being surprised that he was taking the first team reps. He was like, "Oh, I didn't know that." Like, is that something that should have been communicated, or does it also not matter? That's the only thing that I didn't know.
I don't really know like the normal process. I would say, right, if the story is, hey, we talked to Aaron 2 months ago, he told us he's not going to be here.
Yeah.
You would hope that's at least like talk to Tyrod. You know what I mean? Like not even from hey man, but just kind of like I've been talking to my coach a little bit and they brought it up, or Aaron, told me.
Right. Or even like, Aaron talks to him.
So again, it's like that's not the best. But it comes down to like we're having these dissections of like 3 days of camp after Aaron was just there for 10 days. You know what I mean? Like where it's like
And you're right, they would have spun this anyway. If Robert Saleh had said that they were going to excuse the absence or they weren't going to fine him, then they'd be like, oh, we are giving preferential treatment to Aaron. Keep sucking his dick. Like they would find any way to spin it. So you're right. It's nothing. It has zero to me, impact on the 2024 season.
2 weeks later, like no one's still talking about this. Like Blake and I haven't done this podcast in a while.
No,
we were talking about it because it's something that happened, but it's not like this is still a story. And so it's like
last week, Colin Cowherd had Julian Edelman on.
Oh boy.
And Julian was like, and he was like, I'm just surprised, I would be kind of confused if I was one of those new offensive linemen showing up to participate. And I'd look around and say, where's the quarterback? Like Julian Edelman was giving that take. I was like, he had a tweet that came out, or he had a take that came out, a quote when Tom missed the 12 training camps. It was like, oh, it's a big nothing burger. It's no big deal. And it's like, you sure about that? They need something to talk about, but that's the only thing I've seen recently, but you're right. It's one of those stories that came and went, and it doesn't even matter anymore.
So,
do you think we're the last people to talk about it?
Come get your Aaron Rodgers news.
Yeah, until he shows back up. I think the last thing, what makes me even more mad about it, is that there's a way more important.
That's what was frustrating.
On the roster.
Exactly. The Haason Reddick was a story
one that means a
mattered,
lot.
And we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, and it's like. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
Again, this offseason, I have been a little bit not checked out, but I don't like react to every story that comes out because it's just too much.
Well, which is what blew my mind, because one of my favorite things from this offseason was TonyVegas, the third disappearance that we were going to talk about today. And you were like, no, what's going on with
I saw his name a few times. Truthfully, if we're really going to get into the weeds here, Jets Twitter people, there's been some scandals and some bad things that people have done, and things like that.
Oh.
And so when I saw that there was like Twitter drama, I put in quotes, I just kind of I assumed it was like something bad that I didn't really want to care about, and so I just moved on, But yeah, I am a little bit familiar with the name, but I went into this completely cold. I was thinking about maybe looking into it, but then I decided it would just be funnier if Blake could kind of explain it to me. So yeah, I have no idea what this is
and about. It's so dumb, and I really don't want us to spend forever on it, but basically this guy, Anthony Perrone, or Perrone, whatever it is, he worked for a partner company that worked in accordance with One Jets Drive, something affiliated worked for a company there, spent
Probably
time
like a
around the
freelancer.
organization, made
Is that
friends
a good
within
way to
the
say it?
staff management. He
Like his
did
company was
something. It
hired.
wasn't media
Oh, okay.
related though. It wasn't anything media. I think it was like tenting or like tents. I'm probably
Say
very
that
off
again.
with
It was
that, but like
what?
he was just like tents, like
Oh,
pitching
like
up
event
tents,
management
that you would
almost.
like he was
Sure.
just there. Yeah, probably, most likely. So he was just around the organization a bunch, and I'm sure he made some connections, and those connections, whoever they were, felt like, yeah, we can talk about this stuff around him. Or maybe he was listening to things. I don't know how he got the information, but he became this Twitter account, TonyVegas, and would basically like tweet, getting drunk later tonight, gonna do a AMA, fire away your questions. And would just like report all these stories about like Zach's relationship with the coaching staff, or Elijah Moore screaming at Mike LaFleur during a practice and that causing the whole disruption that, turned into his eventual trade. All of these stories. And he would spew stuff. He would try and do sources on like free agency and the draft. He didn't get all of them right. He got some of them
Sounds like I
right,
should have been
most
more
of them
plugged into
wrong. But it
this
was
guy.
just this random account that just was spewing crazy stories. Talked about Michael Carter, the former running back with the Jets, now with the Cardinals. Just would randomly be like, yeah, I'm bored tonight. Fire away questions. I'm just going to answer everything. Questions about, Zach Wilson. A lot of it was focused around the quarterback. Some of it was, around the coaching staff and Robert Saleh as well, too. A lot of Nathaniel Hackett. And so, yeah, off this burner account, he got a lot of people's attention, and he got way too comfortable. Eventually, it got back to the company that he worked for that he was doing this, and they fired him. So they let him go, and I think he took that as a way to like, oh, well, I'm not being held back now. Let me just like keep firing off. He got very confident on Jets Twitter. And then on Father's Day, he tweeted at the entire beat staff, like at Zach Rosenblatt, at Connor Hughes. He was like waiting for you guys to, yeah, he's like waiting for you guys to wish me happy Father's Day. And then Connor Hughes quote tweeted it with a tweet from the company that had hired him, his new job, and was like, congrats, dude. Hope you have a good day. And then TonyVegas deleted count, disappeared, outed him that his name was, what was it? Anthony Perone, yeah. And so, yeah, the third disappearance out there in this world. He was fun. Basically, whenever I would interact or see his tweets, I would be like scrolling through my phone in bed at like 11 p.m. on a Saturday and be like, oh, what's TonyVegas doing? And he's just spewing off nonsense. So, again, a nothing burger.
Just a fun off-season little thing.
Just as unimportant, but just fun.
Do you have a story that was like the most notable?
There are
like
people,
that like you were surprised by, or like, because to me, like the Zach Wilson stuff's like interesting, but you kind of knew what was going on. The Elijah Moore, Michael Carter, you knew, those guys got dealt. Like, was there any good takeaways?
Yeah,
from
I think it. Apparently, early on, LaFleur knew that Zach Wilson didn't have the brain for an NFL to run an NFL offense. I think that was the biggest thing. Is the coaching staff early
now that
on
you
was
say
like,
that,
whoa,
I maybe
this guy
did
doesn't
see
have
that
it.
and just didn't realize it was this guy. But yeah, that was like what the story I saw was like. They very quickly were like, oh, we were kind of misled, whether maybe to our fault, but we thought that his football IQ was way higher than it was.
What they got out of it. And then I guess the other story, Elijah Moore just screaming and cursing out LaFleur during practice, and that eventually led to his departure.
Like I remember that happening.
I wish I had the problem is, and maybe I should have done this beforehand, but the problem is he deleted the account, so like the tweets you can't go. I need I need to find screenshots for the stories, because maybe I can bring a few to you next week and we can laugh at them
instead
together.
Of actually having info, we can just lie and just like make up crazy stories.
Just lie about everything.
Like, this guy is the cafeteria manager, so he would know.
Well, the problem is we have to get some things right.
Yeah, like early on.
So we have to just like, Aaron Rodgers intends to play all 17 games this season, and just have that do numbers.
Or just predict something like, I don't even know. I don't know. We'll have to brainstorm.
Dwayne Brown enters training camp with a lingering knee injury.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, no, not Dwayne Brown. Tyron Smith.
Right,
That's who I
yeah.
needed to say. Morgan
All
Moses
of the Jets
is...
linemen are... All of
I'm
the
getting
Jets
all of our
linemen will be
old
injured by week
tackles now
3.
confused.
And then
There's
just
too many.
nail that when that happens.
Yeah.
Knock on
That'll
wood,
be great.
everybody.
Yeah. Ugh. All right. Well, cool. Well, Teddy,
I'm ready to blind rank.
I think it's time to blind rank some Jets
fucking do it.
quarterbacks. So, plain and simple, if you... I'm surprised that you haven't seen videos like this before. My social media feeds...
But I just didn't know if that's what you were having me do.
If you're on...
Or I'm going to make my own little list here.
I see what you're saying. Well, you don't even know who I'm going to say.
Because I have to rank them 1 through 6, right?
Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Visualize.
Yeah, good point. Yep. Yeah. Yep, good point.
Yeah, I mean, okay. All right.
I'm going to do a little bit of a background just to recap this all. I know I mentioned it at the beginning, but we're blind ranking 6 Jets quarterbacks from the Cortland training camp era on, which is basically 2009 to present. They have to have started a minimum of 5 games with the Jets, and I'm going to have Teddy blindly rank them. We're going to start with a very memorable one. We're going to put Sam Darnold on the list.
Okay. I'm going to put him at 4.
Interesting choice. All right, Sam Darnold. Talk me through the thought process. Yeah.
We're 2009 to 2024, so we're in a 15-year window, right? So I kind of have a general idea of who the quarterbacks have been, and I think that putting Sam Darnold at 4 leaves me room to put the quarterbacks that I want to put in the top 3 there. So we'll see if I
I like that. I like that train of thought. Now, I am going to try and throw you for loops, so do keep that in mind.
Here we are.
All right. Well, number 2, let's put this second quarterback out there, Geno Smith. Where does Geno Smith rank?
I apologize. I forgot about Geno Smith, and this might really screw things up.
That was
okay.
Where does Geno Smith go
let's
on the
be
list?
Realistic.
Now, Geno Smith is in here, so maybe another quarterback that you're thinking isn't in here.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know who the 6
There's a chance I left
be.
someone out.
Geno Smith, not all that good for the Jets. Really. And I hope Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be on this list.
He will not be. I can give you that. No Aaron Rodgers on this list.
Who my top 3 is going to be. I'm going to put Geno at 5. And I actually don't think that's that crazy, putting him below Darnold. I think that with his recent success, it seems like he should be higher. But he never really did much for the Jets. And the whole thing with him getting punched in the face, that was a big crazy story. So,
I don't think it's it's that crazy. I would just throw back and say as well too, I don't think a lot of Jets quarterbacks have brought success to the franchise over the last 15 years. So,
if you don't have the ones I'm excited
we
for,
we have 4 spots left. I'm giving you one that you're excited for, and I'm gonna do it right now. I'm gonna give you Mark Sanchez.
So here's the thing: Mark Sanchez is my number 1 in my heart forever and always. I mean, took us to 2.
Yeah.
So yeah, fuck it.
Mark Sanchez, number 1. There's only one guy I think you could put above him, and
Theodore, he's not on the list. Not on the list. That's the loop I was throwing you for. Actually, probably one of 2 loops I'm throwing you for here.
So
you did right
Ryan
by putting Mark
Fitzpatrick
Sanchez up there.
Of? Okay.
Yeah,
because he's great. He would have been, but
no Ryan Fitzpatrick.
The thing is, Ryan Fitzpatrick probably had a better season than Sanchez had in either of his 2 years. But Sanchez had the 2 AFC Championship games.
Yeah.
That's stole my heart. So, all right.
I feel mean with some of these now. I did set you up for failure here. I got to think about who I want to throw out next.
It's going to be funny because you're going to fuck me, and I'm going to tell you the people that I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, there's going to be a bad quarterback that you have at 2 and 3 probably.
So we have 3 bad quarterbacks
probably
left?
both. All right, so What do you
I
think of
love
Josh
Josh
McCown?
McCown. He was going to be in my top 3. Okay.
All right. Where are you going to put him?
I don't know if I'm forgetting about someone, but I want to put him at 2.
I did do you dirty here with one guy. I did you dirty with one.
I'm putting
Josh McCown at 2. Talk me through the thought process.
I mean, unless I'm being really short-sighted, my top 3 when you told me we were going to do this were Sanchez, then Fitzpatrick, then McCown. They're the only guys who have really given us good years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying. Yep. I think McCown was a 10-win season, but I might be getting him confused with Fitzpatrick. But McCown at least had stats. Him and someone were boys, and I loved it. I don't know. I'm not remembering well, but McCown was a decent quarterback for us. He was kind of like Ryan Fitzpatrick light. He was like an older bridge guy, didn't throw for as many touchdowns, but had a decent year. I'm going to go him number 2. It's sad looking at this list because other than Ryan Fitzpatrick, there's really not a lot of good quarterbacks at all. And I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm saving number 6 for someone specific. So I think most people know who that will be.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to throw out next will be Bryce Petty. 5 starts as a New York Jet.
What's funny about Bryce Petty is I think we drafted him as like a 2nd rounder, maybe 3rd rounder. And
third.
Where did he go to college? I remember him, having that. I think
it was Baylor.
He had that
right?
pedigree.
Was it Baylor?
But he was one of those guys who just like never played for us. I mean, you said he got to 5 games. And I do think that like back in the day,
is crazy,
and it wasn't that long ago, but like back in that era of like 2010, it wasn't as like you wouldn't get clowned as hard for like taking a quarterback and him not playing. Like I never was like furious at the Jets for like picking Bryce Petty. I'm sure some people were, but so my options here are to put him at 3 or 6. Now I'm thinking Zach Wilson's going to be your next quarterback. No rope-a-dope. You got to go with whoever you had committed to. So I've got
my list. My list has been the same.
Bryce Petty at 3 because I can't risk Zach Wilson being at 3 on this list. So I'll put Bryce Petty at 3. What do you got for me? All right.
Your number 6 slot is Zach Wilson.
And here's the deal with Zach Wilson. I don't mean to hate on the kid. He's a decent kid. Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold were both guys that we drafted high. Like Geno Smith, for example. We took him in the 2nd round, right? Him not working out, it is what it is. Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold were guys that we drafted. And we drafted in the top 3. Picks. And we, when you're a fan, listen, some of you out there, maybe you're geniuses. Even in my opinion, the smartest NFL minds, it's you just get quarterbacks wrong. And so when we draft a guy like Sam Darnold or when we draft a guy like Zach Wilson, I'm sitting there as a fan and I'm saying, hey, they wanted to take this guy this high. I believe in him. Let's fucking go. And really both of them never really had great games. They had a few, but Sam Darnold at least had a couple like games almost. Zach Wilson truthfully had a couple.
He's going to have a couple more this year.
Like even in the games that you're like, that was the best Zach Wilson game, it's only a good half. So I really just hate him a lot in terms of him being a quarterback. If anyone saw the picture of him in his Broncos jersey, it's pretty funny. Yeah.
I was going to ask, did you like the new haircut that he's styling? He's going
the NFL pictures the last 2 years for everybody, but specifically quarterbacks. They just like give them the worst poses. Like
terrible.
I know that like the
Mac
hands
Jones
in your
ones?
thing is like a it's like a common pose, your hands in your shoulder pads.
Yeah,
but like they all just look so dorky. So my list: Mark Sanchez, Josh McCown, Bryce Petty, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, Zach Wilson. If I had to do it again, I'd put Geno at 3, Bryce at 5, keep Sam Darnold at 4. I mean, I was thinking that the top 3 were going to be Sanchez, Patrick McCown, so I think I did okay. I would post that on the internet. Yeah,
it's a pretty good list. I was worried how things were going to go. If I if Josh actually makes sense. So I was worried if I had thrown out Bryce earlier. It's all about how you throw him out as well too. Like starting out, like I would have been like, if you had said Darnold at 3, I would have been like, yeah, that probably isn't that bad either. Gino's a little bit lower, but it's a good
end
list.
this podcast.
It is. It's
Let
the
me
right
look up
list.
Geno Smith Jets stats.
Give him his flowers.
Because I'm struggling to really remember. Because you know what I'm struggling to remember is who ended up being the quarterback the year that he got punched in the face. I should know that. I know. I should know that.
See, now 2015 and 2016
was Fitzpatrick.
Wait, was this McCown? Yeah, so it must have been McCown then. Let me take a look.
Sorry, everybody, but we got to figure this out. All right, so Geno had
I'm pretty sure
4 seasons with the Jets, but in the last 2 he only played 3 combined games. He went 8-8 and then 3 for 10 in 2014. 12 touchdowns, 21 interceptions his first year, 13-13 his second. Yeah, so I don't feel bad about where I ranked him. The one thing that I always remember about Geno Smith is at West Virginia, he had 42 touchdowns, 6 interceptions in his senior season. And that was the big thing when we drafted him, thinking he would replace Mark Sanchez was, hey, this guy doesn't turn the ball over. And that's not what happened, 21 interceptions in his first season. Also, a storied got fucked out of the gate. He was never supposed to play that 2013 season. Mark Sanchez hurt his shoulder in the preseason game where they're benching people because they got fumbled, and then they put Sanchez back out there, and he gets hurt, out for the season. So Geno Smith, kind of a rough start to his career. Obviously, has bounced back a little bit, but I'm okay with where he ended.
Wait. So the Geno Smith punch season, was that 2016?
I didn't.
Is that what you were saying? Is the year that Geno got punched, was that 2016?
Yes.
Okay, so then it was Fitzpatrick that finished out that season. That was also a year that Bryce Petty got 4 games in.
Man, we should know this stuff. I apologize, everybody.
Oh, God. All those years are a blur. I mean, listen to those quarterbacks that we just listed. Who's remembering all that stuff? Geno, Smith.
Geno's punch.
That's a quick Google search.
Well,
it was
2015.
In 2015. Okay.
2015 was
so it looks like
was the great Fitzpatrick year.
Fitzpatrick
year. Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker
Yeah.
combining for 26
So that all
touchdowns.
happened because Geno got
Hey, that's a good thing for us. Yeah, poor guy.
That's hilarious. That's funny. Yeah, the way it played out.
All right, well, that's a podcast.
Cool. I like that. I want to do that with different position groups. I want to. I think that'd be fun to do.
It's like all time,
because we're always gonna. Yeah.
Not all time.
I like that. We'll be able to have something like this to weekly get us between now and the important stuff. Because there's a few things that I do want to talk about with the Jets as it pertains to this upcoming season.
Oh, yeah.
Even big picture stuff with the Jets as well too that I don't think we've touched on yet. But it'll be nice to add that in at the end of every episode and blind rank our favorite Jets.
One for you.
Anything else, Theodore? Anything else? What's scratching your itch here? Are you good? Any Jets takes you need to get off before we say
goodbye?
We're
in that dead season for the NFL. Things will start picking up. Training camp should start end of July. I looked it up before. The Jets cut some dude because he got caught with weed. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, caught with weed. I saw that too. Yeah.
Randall Cobb, his Tesla Charger caught on fire. Kind of crazy. These are the stories,
I didn't see that one.
because there's nothing much
That's
going
wild.
on. But yeah, Haason Reddick's the story of the offseason. It's the only thing that really is of substance. So keep your eye out on that. But otherwise, I'm good. It's good to be back.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone for listening.
Nice. Yeah, of course. Appreciate you all as always. Follow us on our socials at KUWTNYJ. Theodore at Teddy Huncho. I am at Spring Blake with 4 A's. We will talk to you next week. Peace.